Hey everyone, Mark Metternich here. Great to see your smiling faces. Here is an extremely short video so that you can get set up using the free Raw Converter Raw Therapee for its superior upsizing algorithm that beats all of Adobe's algorithms by far. But before we do that, you need to know that this video is in two parts. The first half is much more about what are the options for conventional upsizing. Why Lanczos is the very best, why there's so much misinformation on this topic, why the many other upsizing algorithms are not as good, and how you can test for yourself so that you can find the truth about the algorithms. What is it that we're looking for in conventional algorithms that will truly produce the highest quality print or enlargement? Part 2 is how to set up Raw Therapee and easily use it so that you can benefit from its superior Lanczos upsizing algorithm. And even far superior capture sharpening. We're talking about conventional upsizing algorithms, which still rule. But most people know that we also have AI-based upsizing algorithms, such as Topaz Gigapixel, On1, AI Resize, Adobe Super Res. For now, all I'm going to say is that although AI is pushing things forward, and these softwares can do a tremendous job in local areas of an image, but almost always they do more damage than good. And although they are quite useful, conventional upsizing algorithms done right are still foundational and critical and cannot be avoided if you want to make the highest possible quality prints or enlargements. There is an article online that says that Lightroom uses this algorithm to export enlargements. I've tested that algorithm and it is actually horrendous and is definitely not Lanczos. You also have Irradiant Developer, or however you pronounce it, and they do have 3 Lanczos upsizing algorithms, so hybrids, and one of them, the one called Smooth, matches the same one that is in Raw Therapee. That's the only of the 3 I would choose. The other 2 Lanczos hybrids, although they may look better when you first size them up, they cannot take quite as much sharpening and you will see artifacts. I test this stuff weekly, daily, monthly, and the biggest problem is people don't know how to do the testing. So really quickly, when you're working on a file and you're in Photoshop, make sure you save your master file before upsizing and sharpening with your channels, because if you have areas that are smooth and then areas that have detail, let's say you have smooth water, long exposure effects, but then you have highly detailed areas. If you go and take the time to make great masks, those masks will follow you. But Adobe does not have the best conventional upsizing algorithm. In fact, their algorithm is mediocre, does not beat Lanczos. And I test every algorithm that there is. If you want to keep your channels, because the channels do not size up in Raw Therapee and some other AI software, and there's no way that I would choose Adobe Super Res. It's a generic AI upsizing algorithm that just is horrible and gives you no control whatsoever. So just let me show you a couple of things really quickly so you're not making a mistake in Photoshop. Image size. By default, most people have it on automatic unless you go into your Photoshop preferences and you change it, which I do. Automatic is horrible for upsizing, and it's also not the best for downsizing. So here's the list that we have. Bicubic Smoother is the best upsizing algorithm that Adobe has. None of the other algorithms in this list compare. The knowledge on the internet on this issue is pure misinformation, and it's very, very difficult for people to cut through it. When you upsize using all of these algorithms, plus all of your conventional algorithms, just upsizing them alone does not tell you anything in terms of the testing. It's how much advanced sharpening protocol that image can take before it starts looking artifacty or artificial. Some algorithms look nice and sharp at the beginning, and you start sharpening them and they just turn into nothing but a mess. Most people don't know the correct viewing distances to be evaluating prints. They are also on the wrong monitor. They're not on a 30-inch QHD monitor, 2K monitor, which has the precisely perfect pixel size of 0.25 millimeter to see detail as it really is. All other pixel sizes are inferior to this monitor. The Dell U3014, the U3017, or UP3017 cannot be beat even today. And when you are evaluating an image on the correct monitor, not a 24-inch, not a 27-inch, but a 30-inch 2K monitor, it's 50% viewing distance that you evaluate it, and all testing that comes up has to be brought through ideal sharpening protocol to its best place and then compared. Preserved details is almost identical to sizing up and sharpening with just a touch of high pass. I can mimic it perfectly in Photoshop, and you don't want some algorithm adding a generic amount of sharpening to your whole entire image, because your image has different sharpening needs in different places. Preserve Details 2.0 artifacts like crazy and has kind of a weird artificial look to it. Bicubic Smoother is the best still today for Adobe algorithms, just not as good as Lanczos. Lanczos is similar, but it retains more real information that was in the file without adding sharpening or artifacts. And like Bicubic Smoother, it can handle more sharpening after the upsize and get superior quality detail. Bicubic Sharper is hideous when it comes to upsizing. Bicubic Smooth Gradients, it's not very good for upsizing. It's the best for downsizing for web images. Nearest Neighbor, horrendous for upsizing. Bilinear, horrendous for upsizing. And why Adobe doesn't put Lanczos in this list here defies my imagination. What we do is we will upsize in Photoshop so our masks come up as well, but then we can go make a copy of our master file, bring it up in Raw Therapee, size it up, and then drop it as a layer into the layer stack, and then we can throw away the Adobe Bicubic Smoother and we can use Lanczos. And yes, you're going to get an improvement. And this is not controversial. It's controversial to people who don't spend 8 to 16 hours a day, 6 days a week, pushing the bleeding edge of enlargements and print quality detail. So what I would do is pick a number, let's just say 60 inches. And that's how big this image was going to be. I'm going to not choose automatic. Automatic used to choose Bicubic Smoother. It no longer does. It's in and of itself its own algorithm currently. So I'm going to choose Smoother. Make note of your pixel size on the long end. A 60-inch print at 300 ppi is 18,000 pixels. Just remember that, write it down, and hit OK. This algorithm takes, what was that, maybe a second? The reason I'm making note of that is the very sophisticated algorithms that can do a better job aren't speed algorithms. They are algorithms that quality is much more important than speed. Now, I've already made a copy of this same image and I ditched my channel so that it was channel free and it was flattened. It was a TIFF and I put it on my computer. Now let's go to Raw Therapee and I'll show you how to set it up really easily. Although it is a very nerdy and powerful raw converter, I do use a couple of tools with Raw Therapee that outdo anything that Adobe can do, especially this Lanczos Upsize. I have a 2020 Mac M1 Mini, and I have had a few quirks with Raw Therapee. With my older MacBook, I also had different quirks. So if you do have some quirks, you may have to do some intensive Google searching to find out the answers to the questions. One that's coming up right now is that I can point the file browser to a folder that's full of photos, but it just does not come up. Double click, click on it, whatever you want to do, it still is not working. And I found that the photos that are in my pictures folder, they are showing up. So I'm having to drop my photo I want to size up, my TIFF without channels, into the pictures. So how Raw Therapee is set up is you have a file browser and you have a queue and you have an editor. Before you get going, you have to do a couple of things. First of all, let's set up your queue. I believe default does not have auto start checked. I would check it. Otherwise, you're going to be hitting process, but it'll just go to your queue and sit there. You have to actually come into your queue and check that box to turn it on. You have to choose a save to folder. Right now, I have that on my desktop. Then come over and choose a file format that you want to export to. I'm choosing TIFF 16-bit, not the float. I'm not certain that Raw Therapee can size up a PSD or a PSB file, Photoshop document or large Photoshop document file. So that's one of many reasons why I use TIFF. But my master file is saved as 16-bit, so I'm going to choose 16-bit. I'm going to go with uncompressed TIFF, and I uncheck save the processing parameters with the image. Now let's get started. File browser, click on the image. I'm just going to do a quick double click. It will open up in the editor. Now, here are a couple of things that you have to do. So first thing, I'm going to go up to these little scissors here, the transform tab. I'm going to click on it and I'm going to go down to resize. How Raw Therapee works is if you're going to use any of these panels or windows, you have a power button that you must turn on first or it won't work. Over on the left, you'll see your history, so you'll know if something got messed up. But first thing, hit resize, then go down and you'll see applies to, and hold it down and choose full image. Sometimes it's a little quirky and it's not grabbing what you want it to grab. Just keep playing with it, don't give up, and it will. Method, Lanczos. Yes! Yes! That's the only thing we're interested in. And instead of bounding box, I just go ahead and I choose the width or the height. And because I know in numbers already by memory, because I do this for a living full time, but also if I forget, I'll just look at the Adobe Upsize and it'll tell me how many pixels. So this is a height. We're going to go ahead and highlight the number there. But before we do this, it says allow upscaling. We actually have to check that box. Turning the power on is not enough. So now I'm going to go 18,000 and then I'm going to hit enter. And I see that over here under my history. So all is well. They do have the best capture sharpening in the industry. If you want to play around with that, you can go to the Raw Therapee website and they will tell you what each one of these sliders is all about. Occasionally, there'll be an image that is so hyper clean that I'll try a few versions of it to dial it in just right. kind of underdo it, but it'll tighten up the data, and it does blow away Adobe's Detail tab, which really is capture sharpening. And the only way to use Adobe's is radius to the left, detail to the left. That is deconvolution. Otherwise, that detail tab should be turned off. That sharpening should be turned off. It was never intended for general sharpening purposes and damages all of your images. It is never ideal in its default settings. Just turn that off and create a new preset. That's one of the most important things you could ever learn out of this tutorial. Next, you have to go up to color, click in there, and scroll down to the bottom. You have to make sure that you have whatever color space you're working in, Adobe RGB, sRGB, ProPhoto RGB, or Beta RGB, or a custom RGB, whatever it is. Robert Park and I advocate for the use of Beta RGB. So when you actually put those ICC profiles onto your computer, make sure that they are in your profiles folder and all the subfolders therein, or Raw Therapee will not recognize it. Whether it's Windows or Mac, put it where all your ICC profiles go, and make sure that you make duplicate copies and put them in all the subfolders, or this next part will not work. So let's say this was an Adobe RGB image, which it is. You have to have an input space or a working space and an output space. So I'm going to go to that Adobe RGB, which used to not show up until I pasted it into all the subfolders. Then your output, find that Adobe RGB as well, and you'll be fine. But a new hang up that I'm running into is that it is spitting out extremely flat files, and we now need to punch in a tonal response curve. Go to custom. So far what I've had to do is hit the reset button on the gamma and the slope, and that is working. If you have any problems with this, I would refer back to the Raw Therapee information page, or do a Google search, Raw Therapee tone response curve, gamma, slope, and you will go right to that page. There's a lot of information there. And I leave the black point compensation checked by default and the rendering intent at default. Now, all you have to do is go down to this little hidden button down here, and you click on it, and you're going to see a little green arrow up at the queue. And that means it has gone into the queue and it's processing, and it's going to spit it out into the folder that you told it to. So let's hit it. It's processing right now. And this on my computer takes like 25 seconds. Lightroom, on the other hand, through their exporting, takes like a half a second. And when you compare the two algorithms, you'll obviously know which one is better when you start applying any type of sharpening to it. I can see it immediately. Whatever Lightroom is using is not any of the ones that are in the list in Photoshop, and it is so pixelated. It is so artifacty. It's one of the worst I've ever seen. So I'm done. I'll close out and then I'll open it up into Photoshop. So I'm back in Photoshop. This is that 60-inch that I sized up, particularly to keep all of my masks and my channels, but also I punched in the numbers into image size, so I knew how many pixels tall that Raw Therapee will want me to punch in. Now I'll go ahead and pull that photo from my desktop and slap it on the top here. I just opened it up. There it is. That's the 1.3 gigabyte. Open it up. Very, very slight contrast change. I'm going to select all and make a copy. Command A, Command C. I'm going to close out the Raw Therapee version and Command V, paste in the Raw Therapee version into the Photoshop version. So the Raw Therapee is the top one, RT. The bottom one is Adobe Bicubic Smoother, not smooth gradients, smoother. And if you have the right monitor, has to be a 30-inch 2K display with an 0.25 millimeter pixel size, which is exactly 100 pixels per inch. You can zoom up on the file into an area that's highly detailed and just go all the way up to the pixel level, just to the point where you can see a little bit of something going on. Then turn off the Raw Therapee eyeball, on and off. And if you see any pixels change at all, it's more detail. It's an improvement. And you're watching this through a compressed video, so you're not going to see it as well as I do, but it's obvious. It's kind of like Bicubic Smoother in that you're not going to get the most outrageously detailed upsize, but we have a good 5 to 10% more detail, but it's just real detail without sharpening artifacts and fancy algorithms that make the images look better when they get big. But then as soon as you start sharpening them, they start showing their ugliness and their limitations. I just recently did a test with about 15 different algorithms, and Lanczos always wins. And how they win is that Raw Therapee is going to be able to handle a lot more sharpening. And even though it only looks maybe 5% better, maybe 10 at the most, when you start sharpening it, it's going to look a lot better at all sizes if you are really truly mastering sharpening protocol. So now you don't even need the Adobe unless you need something extra smooth and you're not going to add any sharpening to it. Then you could mask in the Adobe up on the top, and you could punch in your layer mask. Like this is a sky mask. I'm going to click on it and you'll see that the marching ants are over the sky, and I could put a mask on there, and now the softer algorithm, which won't be sharpened, is the sky. If you wanted to do that, it's not necessary. Raw Therapee does smoothness very well, but it retains detail. And if you've got some noise in that sky, it's going to retain the detail even a little bit more. But I have Raw Therapee. Lanczos has all of my land. So I would just flatten this and then go into your sharpening protocol. Get ready to be shocked seeing 4 layers. The proof is in the pudding acid test right after this 1-minute quick blurb. If you want to absolutely master the highest possible quality prints in the world, check out the ultimate, most complete, most comprehensive, and most cutting-edge print workshop in the entire photo industry, guaranteed, or your money back. The ultimate mastering fine art printmaking workshop. That is the only place that we teach all of the very best steps from in-camera capture, all print types, to all levels of photographers, to an absolute perfected master print with dozens of proprietary techniques no one in the industry knows, that are industry game changers. The level of quality that you can get out of enlargements is astonishing today, and none of it is just a push button software. It's a craftsmanship. No stone left unturned, no question goes unanswered. And all of the secret sauce stuff, we share it all. Come join us if you want to be on the fast track to absolutely mastering everything print, post-processing of any type. So here is the acid test. Just a really quick Adobe Bicubic Smoother Upsize. Then I brought in a 50-inch Lanczos Upsize from Raw Therapee. And I also brought in just a complete guess Lanczos Upsize with Raw Therapee with their capture sharpening. And then I added just a touch of sharpening to the finished image. At 50 inches, could just as easily have been 60 or 80 or 90. This was not shot with the sharpest lens on the planet, Canon 11-24, decent lens. Handheld at f9, actually f8 would be sharper. It's a single exposure, but check this out. 50% viewing distance is the correct viewing distance for viewing prints. This is 300 ppi, but we are going to pixel peep seriously here to see the difference between the Lanczos and the Adobe Smoother. So I'm going to go up to a detailed area and just get up on it so the video can see it. Pull back just enough. If you see any difference between the Lanczos algorithm that I'm going to click on, any pixels change, it's an improvement. It's more sharp. There you go. All of that change is less blur in the image with no artifacting and no haloing and no accentuation of noise. Sharper, more detailed. There's no way you can get around it. Many algorithms will look sharper when you pixel peep. It's really how the data handles, and out of all the algorithms that we have available to us today, which ones can be pushed the farthest, retaining real detail, not artifacts or sharpening that's built into the algorithms, and produces the most natural and highest detail quality enlargement after it's gone through sharpening protocol. This next thing is totally astonishing. I'm going to pull back to 50% viewing distance, and you're not going to be able to see how profound this is unless you're viewing this on a 30-inch QHD monitor. But just the Raw Therapee capture sharpening, which I didn't even test different settings whatsoever, is just sharp and clean and natural all the way out to the back walls of the Grand Canyon. Unbelievable. I'm actually now getting closer than you could ever see as a print. And at 100% viewing distance, this should look terrible, no matter what algorithm you use. I'm just showing you that this thing is nice and detailed and barely needs any sharpening at all. Can you imagine? And here it is with a little bit of sharpening. You can see every pine needle, every grain of sand in the wall. This is at least a quarter mile out. When you're getting out to here, you're looking at over a mile out. When you're getting out to here, you're looking at 3 or 4 miles. And when you get out to the very end, it's around 8 miles. And the back wall is somewhere between 12 and 18 miles away. You can see every tree along the ridge there. Unbelievable. Just the Lanczos upsizing algorithm, even with just its capture sharpening, is about 90% finished. Just a touch of sharpening added to it. It's always worth going to Raw Therapee to do the resize and bringing it back in. And if you've been taught that this algorithm's best, or this one's best, or this one's best, or you should sharpen in Camera Raw or Lightroom, this is an area where we put in thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of testing, pushing the quality and the detail of print enlargements to the absolute bleeding edge. And there's actually a very big difference between all of those algorithms once you start hitting this with the most advanced sharpening protocol. Please don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe and share if you enjoy the content. And check out markmetternich.com for my services and more. All the best to you and your family and loved ones, and great light to you.